Hello and welcome to another segment of Armed American TV. My name is Michael Martin. I'm the Vice President of Content here at Delta Defense and the author of the book, Concealed Carry and Home Defense Fundamentals. Once again, of course, I'm here with Tim Schmidt, President and CEO of Delta Defense.
Michael, thank you. Great to be here as usual.
Good to have you back. I tell you, Tim, the topic today is going to be meaningful to any of our viewers, regardless of whether they have a concealed carry permit or not.
Exactly. Michael, today's topic is all about home security and home defense. Now, we're going to be hitting four main topics today. The first one is how to perform your own home security checklist at your house. Now, this is going to help you to know whether or not you're making some of the most common errors in terms of home security. The second thing are simple steps that you can actually take right now to better secure your home. Number three is how to create a home defense plan. Now, this is actually a lot kind of like a fire escape plan.
Right.
Or
what to do if there's a tornado.
Exactly,
right.
Yeah, but very few families have what we call home defense plans, which is exactly what the family should do in case of a home invasion. And the last thing we're going to be talking about are, of course, going to be home defense firearms. Now, Michael, before we begin, could you just help me explain or help me understand why so many people make these omissions?
It's a great question. The idea of personal protection or self-defense is not a new one. In fact, it's getting a real fresh look in a lot of states as more and more states have jumped on the shall issue bandwagon in the last couple decades. We've seen the number of permit holders or concealed carry permit holders just explode in the last couple decades. But as an instructor, one thing that I've seen is that people can spend hours or days analyzing and researching and studying things like situational awareness outside the home or the use of their firearm, but they ignore things inside the home. And there's maybe a couple reasons for that. One reason is that when we're in our houses, we like to think nothing bad can happen there. But of course, we know that's not true. Home invasions do occur. One of the other problems is we can't define definitively how common these home invasions are. The FBI reports annually on violent crimes in a report they call the Uniform Crime Report. And in that report, they'll categorize crimes by things like murder, rape, arson, robbery, and burglary. But one of the problems is they don't differentiate between burglaries in occupied homes and unoccupied homes.
Wow.
Burglaries in occupied homes are what the police would call hot burglaries, or we can simply call home invasions. So statistically, we really don't have good information about how common these things are. Suffice to say, personal protection cannot end at the front door.
Exactly. Well, I mean, what would be the best way for us to get started?
How about if we start at your place?
All right, Michael, sounds great. Let's go
All
there.
right, see you there. Tim, thanks for having us out to your house.
Michael, you're very welcome.
It's a gorgeous house, but are you ready for your home security checklist?
I think I'm ready.
All right, we've got a lot of items to go through. We're actually going to break it down into three categories. The first is going to be windows. We're also going to look at doors, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, and I'll tell you why. And we're also going to look at just some general things like your alarm system, the lights you have set up outside the house, and really just kind of a general appearance, including how close trees and bushes are to your house. You ready?
Let's do it.
Important to know, by FBI statistics, criminals enter homes about 22% of the time through first floor windows. So we're really going to focus on that, okay?
Okay.
So I see a couple windows here that are at ground level. The one here, for example, would seem easy for a criminal to go through, but of course on the other side of this window is a staircase.
Yeah, there's about probably 6 or 7 foot drop.
6 or 7 foot drop, and criminals have been known to do some pretty strange things trying to enter a home. I see two other windows here that are a little higher. Those are a little more difficult to get through. Now, the average criminal is not going to come out to a crime scene with a step stool or something to climb
Sure.
on, but if they find anything in the yard, even like a planter they can step on, they might use that to get through that window.
Sure.
And those are also high windows, and I like the fact that you have coverings on the windows, so if a criminal tried going through that window, it would make a lot of noise.
Right.
So as I mentioned, I like the fact that you've got the planters on this window. That's going to keep criminals probably out of that. Now, one thing we'll want to avoid is having anything that's close to the house that's going to block a criminal that might be targeting you when you pull up, your wife when you pull up, or something that can hide that person from entry. So for example, those bushes or those trees are really going to block the view of the house from the neighbors, and if a criminal wants to enter a window down here, we'll want to pay some extra close attention to that. So let's go check out those windows.
Sounds good.
All right, so what I see here is these are windows that if I'm a criminal, I would probably target these windows before I would target the windows out front, especially because the view is blocked.
That retaining wall kind of adds some cover.
And that doesn't mean when you have a house like this, you can't have windows on the lower level or you've got to redesign this area of the house, but it might mean we pay extra close attention to what these windows are.
Okay.
We want to make sure your alarm maybe has a glass break sensor, or these windows may be even ones that you pay for an extra security window that has a baked-in laminate that means you can really hit it few times with a hammer and it's not going to break. In fact, it's kind of interesting. One of my favorite shows is DIY Channel's Deconstruction.
Oh, sure, I've
They
seen
actually
that.
did a series of tests to determine how quickly different window types could be breached. A window with standard glass obviously can be breached in less than a second. You hit it with a hammer, you kick it, and it'll break down. At the other end of the spectrum are high security windows that actually have a laminate baked into the glass. You can hit it with a hammer 8 or 10 times and you're not going to be able to breach it.
Oh, that's
Now,
fantastic.
as a firefighter, though, I have some advice that may counter that argument. We may need to breach a window again and rescue people, or if there's a fire in the basement and we need to go fight it, we need to get windows broken out so we can allow heat and smoke to come out.
Sure.
If we can't do that, we might lose the house. So you have to weigh the pros and cons.
Right, right.
One other thing I do notice here is that you have security lights up there. I think that's fantastic. Concerns about electricity bills aside, we need to have our houses be well lit. And you not only need to have your house well lit, you want to have your neighbor's house as well lit. That means your house is kind of cocooned in this wall of light, and the bad guys are going to look for a few houses that are not so well lit.
Dark, yep.
Yep, they're not going to risk being targeted. Should we take a look inside?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, we'll go look at that front door. Tim, I think we did pretty good on the inspection of the windows on the outside, and we also looked at some general appearance things, such as how close trees and the shrubbery was to the side of the house. Before we take a look at the door, there's a couple other general appearance things that I want to point out, and you get an extra point for both of these.
Okay.
I like the fact that your garage door is closed.
Okay.
Not everybody does that, and
Right.
of course, if you leave that garage door open, you've just given an entry point to a criminal, and not only have you allowed them to come into your garage to steal your property, it means you're allowing the criminal to probably get inside of the house.
I'll admit that we leave that door open a lot.
Yep, and we can do it as well. But one thing I make sure that we do is when we're inside the house, or if we go for a walk around the house, we make sure that garage door is closed.
Wow.
Another point I'm going to give you is for the secondary door here that has a lock. Now that glass might be standard glass or tempered glass, which could be broken, but the average criminal is going to look at that and say, too much to go through, I'm going to find another place to
Yeah,
go
it's a
through.
big plate of glass,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So let's talk about some percentages for a second.
Okay.
We looked at windows. Statistically, criminals are about 23% likely to go through first floor windows. But what percentage of burglaries do you think the criminal acts is actually coming through the front door?
You want me to guess, or?
Why don't you venture a guess?
Gosh, I'd say probably 10%.
It's actually 34%. So
Whoa.
34% of the time, criminals
Right through the front
get
door.
through that front door, and the typical way of breaching that door is nothing more than a good swift kick.
Wow.
The average door can be breached just by a couple kicks. In fact, we talked about the DIY Channel's Deconstruction. They were able to determine through a series of tests that the average front door can be breached with just a couple kicks of 60 joules each, and the way they do that is with a 100-pound weight, and by stretching it back to a certain distance, they can measure the impact on the door. On a standard door, it was opened by just 2 kicks or 2 impacts of 60 joules total, and that's
Wow.
pretty easy. That means the average criminal could knock down that front door in just a couple kicks. So we're going to take a look at your door and see if you might suffer that same fate, or if we can find a way to strengthen this front door.
We're not going to kick mine in, are
We're
we?
not going to kick it in, but we'll take a look at a couple things here. Tim, we talked about how the average way a criminal enters the front door is by nothing more than a good swift kick.
Okay.
We talked about the DIY test where they used a 100-pound battering ram. They hit
Right,
an
yep.
average door twice, and it breached the door. And those kicks were 60 joules each, which is about the average kick of a grown adult. How would you like to have your door be 17 times stronger than that?
17 times?
And it's going to be a real simple thing we'll have to add. We're going to look at the strike plate here, and this is where the deadbolt locks into.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull the screws out of here, and I'm
Okay.
going to see how long those screws are. Most screws are fairly short. They just go into the door frame. What we're going to look for is we're going to look for screws that are at least 3 inches deep, but that means it goes past the door frame into the stud of the wall. Okay, so you've got the tape measure here. Let's see here. Should we place a bet on it?
Sure.
All right.
Ooh.
Now, I'm not always a good judge of distance, but I think that's shorter than 3 inches.
Let me measure it.
What did we bet?
Oh boy.
I should have
Looks like
that's
about
something pretty good.
about 3/4 of
About
an inch.
3/4 of an inch. So that could easily be torn out if that front door is kicked.
Wow.
You buy 3-inch screws, you buy a reinforced strike plate, and it's going to take that 17 times the amount of force to
Wow,
breach
17.
the door.
That's amazing.
And that's not even doing any replacement on the door.
Wow.
So that's an easy fix. We'll add that to your checklist.
Sounds good.
All right. So Tim, we looked at the windows from the outside. Let's take a look at them from the inside. The one
Okay.
thing I really wanted to focus on was the locks themselves. I wanted to make sure that these weren't plastic locks. These are metal locks, which is good. These are hung windows. That means we can add one extra security method if we'd like, and that's a bar stop here.
Okay.
Now that doesn't always, fit in the decorative design of your house. So the thing that I would recommend if you didn't have those bar stops is back to that glass break indicator. So if there's a glass break indicator on the alarm, if that window is shattered, it's immediately going to sound the alarm, and the criminal is going to hear that and most likely take off. You could also consider those high security windows we talked about as well that have baked-in laminate that make the window very difficult to breach. But believe it or not, there's kind of a homegrown version, a DIY version of that. In the Midwest where we live, our winters get pretty cold, so sometimes people will put the lining on the inside of the window cut from sheets of the clingy plastic. It's insulation, but that also can help avoid having the window breached very, very easily. We talked about the alarm. Let's talk about that a little bit further.
Okay.
I know you've got an alarm system. I want to make sure you set it religiously.
Sure.
But off the top of your head, what percentage of people do you think actually set their home alarms? And this is from some insurance company statistics.
I would guess 95%?
95%. It's 19%.
Only 19%?
So insurance companies have analyzed these numbers. 19% of people actually set the alarm. The number one excuse is people are concerned about having pets in the house. 53% of people don't set their alarm because they're concerned about pets. But just like the glass break indicators, alarm company now have pet detectors as well. The way it works is not only does it have a motion detector, but it also has an infrared heat detector as well. So it can tell the difference between a small animal like a dog as opposed to a grown adult walking through the house. So my advice to viewers is don't worry about having a pet. Invest in one of the alarms from companies like ADT or others that have the pet detectors and the glass break detectors as well.
Excellent.
But set that alarm.
Yes, sir.
So I think, Tim, I'd give you probably a B+ overall.
I'll take
If we go to the hardware store and get 3-inch screws, I'd give you an A-.
Michael,
and if we
I'm gonna do
figure
that
out
tonight.
those first floor windows, then you get an A.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All right.
Michael.
Should we head back to base camp?
Let's do it.
All right.
Well, Michael, that was a great trip to my house. I think
Learned a lot.
Very, very informative, very fascinating. So a question that I get a lot is, Tim, what is the perfect home defense firearm? Can you speak to that a little bit?
And I'd go back to one of the other segments where we talked about there being no perfect handgun for anyone, but we are going to talk about some basic things that people should consider. I'll say to the viewers that it may look like we've got kind of an arsenal here, but the truth is when we're thinking about protecting our homes, we're not just thinking about protecting our families. We're talking about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, our kids. And to be honest, there's nothing I wouldn't do when it comes to stopping a home invader from coming into my house and potentially harming my family. So, I'll state that, and we'll talk through some of the options here. You will see that I've got a couple shotguns here, and I do have a rifle, and we'll talk through what those different options provide to us. One thing people talk about a lot is conventional wisdom is that a shotgun is the best tool for home defense, but that's usually based on the conventional wisdom that you can't miss with a shotgun, and of course that's incorrect. I can't tell you how many times I've seen posts on gun forums where someone says you can't miss with a shotgun, and of course that's incorrect. I can miss with a shotgun every time I go grouse hunting. I prove that fact out. The reason people say you can't miss with a shotgun is because the shot has a pattern as opposed to a single hole. It creates something larger than a 45 caliber bullet, for example. That pattern size maybe matters at 25 to 30 yards when you are hunting grouse, but of course I can still miss at that distance. But at 7 feet or maybe 21 feet, the average distances that we'll have in a house, a shotgun pattern at 7 feet might be no bigger than a baseball, and it might be no bigger than a basketball at 21 feet. But the difference that a shotgun provides is really in the load that it delivers. I have a double-aught buckshot here. This has 8 pellets in it that are about the size, nearly the size of this 380 ACP. So the load that I'm delivering in that baseball-sized pattern is going to have a lot more stopping power than simply firing one round. And if a guy's coming down my hallway, I need to stop that person before it's too late. Now, options on shotguns can be anything from that grouse gun that I might use. This is a great Beretta that I love. This is a double barrel shotgun, so I have the ability to put 2 rounds in here, and I'd like to think that no rounds would suffice, but I've got a couple round options there. You could have your granddaddy's old shotgun. You could have a single barrel, a double barrel, maybe a pump shotgun, and of course. And we've all heard that thought that a guy coming through your door or coming through your window and he hears that shotgun racking is going to be enough to scare them away. My home defense shotgun is a little bit more serious, and I'll go back to that point that if I'm serious about protecting my family, I'm going to get serious about the hardware that I use. So I've picked out a Benelli M4 which this currently has a magazine that will store 5 rounds. You can buy an extended magazine tube that will hold 8 rounds. And this is a semi-automatic, meaning when I press the trigger each time, a shell is going to fire. I don't have to worry about racking it. I don't have to worry about reloading anything. And again, I hope that if an intruder is coming in the house, he sees this pointing at him and he runs in the opposite direction. But if not, I have plenty of firepower to stop that attacker. What you see on these shotguns is a couple traditional sights. This shotgun, of course, just has the beads, and this is what I use when I'm hunting. I simply see the length of the shotgun.
That's pretty traditional for a shotgun,
Very
right?
traditional. So this would be something that I would take hunting with me. I really point shoot with this shotgun.
Right.
The Benelli is a little bit different. This one uses something we call ghost ring sights. So in front, I've actually got a front sight, and in the back, I've got kind of a donut-shaped thing. And it's really, if you're focusing through that and you're trying to shoot for accuracy, you're going to think that rear sight's pretty large. But that's the idea behind the ghost ring sight, is that you are seeing that rear sight ghosted. It's going to be very blurred, but you'll see it around that front sight. So it helps you get a good target acquisition. But let's talk about the physiological reactions that can happen during these violent encounters.
Right, right.
Odds are we're not going to be able to see the sights, right? So in a minute we're going to talk about a scope or a red dot that I can mount on a shotgun like this Benelli. It has a rail on the top. I can put a red dot scope on there and really then look at my attacker or look at the target and not worry about lining up any sights.
So Michael, here's a quick question. I noticed that on your nice M4 here, this rail, does this come standard?
On this one, it does come standard, but one of the neat things about rails like that is if I don't happen to buy a shotgun that has a rail on that, let's say I've got my granddad's old shotgun.
Right.
You know, if it's worth any money, I'm not going to mess with it. But let's say it's just a something that I don't worry about adding something to. I can actually buy rail and screw it and glue it onto the side of any wood stock.
Okay.
That means I could put something potentially on the top, or I could mount a light on the side, for example.
Got it.
One of the other things that one of my favorite manufacturers is Surefire. They make some of the greatest flashlights out there. They have replacement forends for the Benellis for just about every shotgun manufacturer out there. So this 4-stock is replaced with a light, and I can turn that on by an on-off switch, or better yet, I can turn it on and off by just pressing it. So, think about what happens in the middle of the night. You wake up, you hear the crashing door, you've got sleep in your eyes, maybe your glasses are sitting on the nightstand next to you. You don't have a lot of time to think about these things. So if you've got to protect your family that are behind you, and you're pointing the shotgun down that hallway, having a bright light, maybe having a laser, maybe having that red dot scope on top is really going to help you out. So if people are...
I was going to say, very important to know what you're about to shoot, right?
Exactly right. And as always, just like the universal safety rules that we've talked about in other segments, that trigger finger does not go in the trigger guard until you're ready to shoot.
Exactly.
Until then, my finger is going to go outside the trigger guard. I might issue commands down the hallway. I might yell, "I've got a shotgun, the police have been called, stay away from me," but I do not put that finger in the trigger guard until I have identified my target as a threat, until I'm ready to press the trigger. And of course that avoids mistakes, but it avoids tragedy if my teenage son, when he gets to be that old, has snuck out and he's coming back in. Or I don't want to shoot a teenage kid who simply has broken into my house to steal booze or something like that.
Exactly.
So I want to identify that target as a threat.
Michael, quick story. Can I share a story? So this happened to me literally 2 weeks ago. It was probably 2:30 in the morning, and my 8th grade son, Tim Jr., he was staying up late, but believe it or not, he was studying. That's kind of the kid he is, God bless him. And he was sneaking upstairs and going to bed, and he knocked like a 8.5 by 11 frame, glass frame off the wall, shatters on the ground. This is 2:30 in the morning. I'm laying in bed. That's what I hear.
You heard that crash,
So of course, I grabbed my shotgun, slowly opened the door. And thank goodness I was following all the rules that we talk about, and there's my 8th grade son, sitting on the ground, looking at this glass frame, thinking, "Holy crap, I'm in trouble!" And I just about.
In one thing that we've talked about in other segments, and we'll mention here as well, is one thing that we like to teach people to do is have. It might sound silly, it might sound like you're trying to play military, but have some family code word, or just some ability where if someone has done something like that, they can shout out. Could be as simple as "It's me, Dad."
Yeah, right.
Just so that you avoid a problem like that.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Well, let's talk about if somebody's considering buying new. And by new, you might buy a used shotgun, but if you're thinking about picking something up new, our advice is always to go with a higher gauge that you can. My suggestion would be to go with a 12 gauge with an 18-inch barrel like this one has here. we talked about gauge in another segment, and people might not even understand exactly what gauge means. Caliber is obviously a measurement of the diameter of the bullet of a like a handgun or rifle round, but gauge is a little more mysterious. Not a lot of people know where that measurement came from,
Right.
and it's actually based on a pound of lead. Leave it to those Europeans.
Probably
to
the
come up with
Europeans,
that.
right?
Yeah, those Europeans come up with this crazy method. So a 12 gauge is named 12 because if you took a pound of lead and broke it into 12 equal parts and turned those pieces into spheres, that's going to fit perfectly in that 12 gauge barrel, where 20 gauge would be the equivalent of 1/20th of a pound of lead that would fit in that barrel. And that's why the bigger the number, the smaller the barrel. So our advice is to go with a 12 gauge. My advice for home defense shotgun rounds would be something around like a double aught or a triple aught, and that's designated by 2 zeros or 3 zeros, double aught or triple aught. For example, the shotgun shell I have here is from Hornady. It's a product called Critical Defense. This has those 8 balls in it that are about the equivalent of a 380 round, which really delivers a major load in that baseball size area. One round can be a stopping round. One round of 380 ACP may not be a stopping round if I'm using a handgun for home defense. A lot of good options here, a lot of things to think about. Should we talk about rifles?
Let's do it.
And again, I'll jokingly say that this looks like an arsenal here, but when it comes to home defense, we have to be very, very serious about that. The rifle that I have here is an AR-15, and I have some different attachments on here. First of all, I'd like to have viewers at home know that this is not some militaristic weapon that's designed to blow massive holes through people. In fact, the round size is fairly small. It's a 22 caliber round. The round name is Remington 223. The reason the military likes carrying this is because you can carry a lot of ammunition in a light load. In fact, the round size in this is much smaller than our soldiers carried in World War II and much smaller than the average deer hunting round. So the average deer hunting rifle, like a 30-30, is going to be much larger than this. I like this rifle because it's a lighter weight rifle. The recoil is almost non-existent. When you press the trigger, you'll see the gun slightly move back. It won't elevate up, won't elevate down. So if I do have to fire a few rounds, I'm going to be able to do that without having a lot of kick or a lot of recoil. In fact, that's all because of this massive buffer spring back here. So you see a couple attachments that I have on here. The attachment on the bottom is another one of those lights from Surefire. So when I grip this foregrip, if I press that little rubbery grip there, it'll send a bright light down range, and I've got a red dot scope here, so I can put this up to my shoulder, look at my attacker or look at my target, and I'm seeing a red dot floating there in the air. Another attachment might be a laser if I don't have the red dot scope, and if I don't even think I can look through that scope, I might have that laser dot, and that means as that guy's coming down the hallway, I've got a red dot surrounded by an extremely bright light, and anyone who walks into that cone of light is going to know that I'm armed and that I'm ready to stop that attacker. I think the AR-15 is a great home defense firearm. You can fire a lot of rounds if you need to. The average magazine is going to have 30 rounds, and again, that might sound to viewers at home or people who have just never been in this world that these guys are talking crazy. We're talking about having an arsenal in our house. But if you think about, if you ask that person the question, what would you do to protect your kids if they're behind you? They would do just about anything.
Right. Would you rather have 5 rounds or 30?
That's about the way I think about it. So a lot of interesting options here, and I will add that red dot scope screws out very easily. I can just pull this off, and I could attach this to my shotgun with the rail on the top. In fact, I think I'll go and pick up a red dot scope when we visit Gander Mountain later today.
Sounds good.
So let's not leave out the lowly handgun, because some people may not have the option of selecting these tools yet, but they may have a handgun that they carry with them as a concealed carry permit holder. But you know the joke about what a pistol is good for, right?
Something like it's a way to fight to
good for fighting away to your long gun, but we hope we wouldn't have to do that. I'm going to show you one handgun that I've used for home defense. This is a 45 ACP. This one happens to be a Kimber. This is designed with a couple attachments on it. Obviously, you can see the light that I have on the front. That's about 120 lumen, which is extremely bright. And this one also has a Crimson Trace grip on it. So when I have a proper grip on it, I'm actually going to get that red dot. Could you talk about sight radius for a second?
Sure, yeah.
You've described this real well. So sight radius tells me what? Why might I choose a long gun over a handgun in a
So, I mean,
house?
I was actually just looking at your 2 shotguns, and your M4 here has a significantly longer sight radius than even this hunting shotgun. And compared to the handgun, it's probably 4 times as long. And so the sight radius really is the distance between the front sight and the back sight. And the longer the sight radius, the more, I guess, the more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sounds forgiving.
Yeah, the more forgiving you're going to be in terms of, if you're slightly off, the longer the sight radius is going to magnify itself less.
And I think what's important to understand here is when we're talking about sight radius, we're not talking about focusing on the front sight and lining it up between the rear sight. It's really pointability again, right? I can point a longer gun more accurately than I can point a shorter gun, especially if I have to have it back more in a tighter retention position.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So
yeah.
a lot of things to think about. So let's talk about securing these firearms here for a bit. We want people to understand that if you do have children in your house, and that's anyone under 18 years old, federal law says that you must have that firearm secured and have it be inaccessible to anybody under 18 years old. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have it under lock and key unless your local jurisdiction says that, but it does mean that that child simply can't find a way to get this firearm and lock it up. So one thing that I really like, and I think this is one of those cool gadgets that just about every guy would like out there. This is a gun vault. This is designed for a pistol. This is something that I might mount inside of a closet, so it has a mounting rack on the left and the right side and the rear as well. But if in the middle of the night, if I hear that window go crash or I hear that front door being kicked down, I can reach into my closet, reach alongside my bed, push the button, drag your finger across it, and it's actually going to pop open and you get immediate access to that handgun.
Wow.
One of the neat things about the way this one operates is it has a light inside.
I was going to say, is there a light in there?
The handgun
really
is automatically accessible in to get up a perfect grip as opposed to something I'd have to scoop up. Now, one thing that I like to use for my shotgun, I use it for my M4 at home, is I have a gun vault from a company called Shotlock. It just looks like a square, but it's mounted to the wall. It has tumblers on the side, so when I open it, I just hit my combination, and it opens up, and I get access to the shotgun. But importantly, what it does here is it blocks the entire trigger guard. So from the outside, there's no access to the trigger guard, no chance the firearm would discharge inadvertently. Very neat setup. My advice is invest in those things. In fact, I'd compare it to buying a good handgun and a lousy holster. You don't want to buy a good home defense gun, but have a bad way to secure it.
And Michael, if I could just add one thing to that. You talk about, there's a federal law that we must follow. I mean, federal law or no federal law, it makes good common sense to be a responsibly armed citizen and secure your firearms.
I agree. In fact, I've heard some people on forums or some students that might say something to the effect of, well, my kids know not to touch these firearms. My advice back to them is you don't need to worry about your kids. You need to worry about your kids' friends or their friends.
Exactly.
As soon as they hear, hey, Mr. Schmidt has firearms in his house, that's a chance for your house to be broken into and these firearms to be stolen. And we want to avoid that kind of tragedy. And I think with tools like the vault from Shotlock or the gun vault from Gun Vault, I think we can get access to these things very quickly. In fact, I will point out, if people worry about those biometric safes, if you can't get it open with your fingerprint, some of these also have a tumbler, and of course it's always got the key backup that should be somewhere very close.
Excellent.
I think we've about summarized this topic.
Michael, I think so. Excellent job. As usual, thank you very much.
Tim, I think that was great information. Thanks for having us out to your home. And of course, it's always nice looking at home defense firearms. I think that's a wrap for today.
Michael, I think so as well. Great job, fantastic job today. I think that home security and home defense is so important because it's so applicable to so many people.
Right.
Thank you, Michael. Viewers, thank you. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. Take care and stay safe.